Good evening, guys. I'm Chris, and welcome back to this Wednesday's episode of Rift Amps. Good news, the Tone Bender Mark III is all fixed, all back together, or almost all back together. So we've got to put the bottom plate and the knobs back on. Eventually found the fault. It was the tiniest hairline crack on the wiper solder joint of the volume pot itself. It took me forever to find it. But we'll get there in the end. It's all back together now. I'm into an Ainsley Lister Signature, his very own touring amp actually, that's here for just a little bit of service work on it before he goes back on the road. So here's my clean tone. Really interesting. It's got like 2 or 3 different mid-range swirls that are interacting with each other as the notes decay. But yeah, what a cool thing, all back together. I don't know what I'm going to charge him because I've spent loads of hours on it for what is really quite a simple fix. So might just charge him the bench fee, but we'll see. Anyway, all good news back together. Right, Q&A time. Ekimerks, I guess. Hi Chris, thanks a lot for your informative and valuable channel. You're welcome. I have some issues with my Laney VC30, UK made in 2004. The heater supply runs at 7.2 volts, which is also shown in the schematics. Isn't this value much too high for the filaments of 12AX7s and EL84s? Yes, it is. Yeah, absolutely. Which shows some discolorations of heat. The heat won't be from the too high heater voltage. It will be because they're overbiased and they're running too hot. Simple as that. Additionally, the amp produces a clearly audible hiss at idle I can't fix. Is that a causal relationship? Possibly. I don't know that amp off the top of my head, at least the later model. I think, was there a 90s one? I can't remember now. I should look this stuff up, shouldn't I? But yeah, if there's a hiss at idle, then there's a number of things it could be. We do know that running preamp valves very hard, a lot of gain, trying to squeeze a lot out of them, does increase Johnson noise, hiss. Could be a number of other components in there, so you need to do further investigation. I mean, ideally, you'd use an oscilloscope and find out exactly where in the circuit where that hiss is coming from. But yeah, I would be interesting to know if the hiss gets worse when you turn up the volume of the amplifier or whether it stays at a certain level. You say it's a hiss at idle, but I want to know if that varies with output level of the amplifier. I found some information on the web how to decrease the voltage by using resistors or diodes. What's your recommendation? So yeah, you can do that. The easiest way to drop a few volts is actually for the heaters. Do you say if the heater supply runs with 7.2 volts, which is also shown in the schematic? So there you're telling me that that's actually what's in the amp as well, which does seem far too high. Schematics can have errors on them. Maybe that's the unloaded voltage, and it drops down once you put the valves in. But if it's actually too hot, you need to bring it down to what? by 0.9 volts. So you could use a Zener diode on the sensor tap, I guess. Would be one way to do it. So yeah, I'd be interested to measure that transformer, see what's going on there. I'd want to do more investigation, but yeah, valves really don't like running much above 7 volts. You need to be close. 6.5 really is the top end I'd ever want to see. But yeah, I'd be looking into that further. Good question though. Number 43 says, odd to see the broken lead on the F&T caps. I recently had one in a basement of mine also break. Amp did not get much bouncing around or otherwise. Hope this isn't a common issue with F&Ts. No, it's a common issue with all capacitors if they are installed incorrectly with the correct amount of strain relief, which is exactly the case in that amp and many others that I've seen. Nothing to do with the F&T caps. The leads are adequately sized, gauged, whatever you want to call it. But if you install them with absolutely no flexibility, bear in mind it's not the bouncing around of moving an amplifier around in transport. It's the micro vibrations of the amp in use that causes the issues. And so, yeah, you have to install your components with some, literally some flexibility and some leeway. So yeah, nothing to do with F&Ts. It could happen to any cap if they're installed poorly. And yeah, if your amp is like that, swap them out. Ainsley Lister Signature fired up on the bench. This is a 240 volt model, running great. I've got it running in what I like to call clean mode. What I mean by that is Ainsley typically runs them with the master quite low, 2.5, 3 at most, but with the gain control quite high. But it's difficult to take accurate measurements on the bench with that for the scope. So what I do is I crank the master all the way up with the gain control quite low, but also with the bright switch out of circuit. That's in circuit, that's out, and then we can just advance it and find where it's happy, which is about 18 volts output in this case, which is around 40 watts clean. So this one's a bit of a clean, in clean mode, as we like to call it. It's a bit of a clean beast. So that one's done and running. This one is the 120 volt model, which will be going to North America. This one's almost done. I've got to finish my heaters. What am I doing? Heaters, shielded wire, rest of the shielded wires, final grounds, and then we can fire that one up too. Kevin the Just, regular channel commentator. Hi Kevin, says, is there a legal obligation to change the Bulgin power socket? I wondered if there was an exemption for old gear, like there is for old cars that are not required to meet all the latest safety standards. Well, depends which way you come at this. The rules are somewhat confusing because Bulgins were outlawed, they're not compliant anymore. And so they can't be fitted to new equipment, nor can they be fitted to refurbished or repurposed equipment. So yeah, we can't use them. If I was doing a full restoration on an amp, I couldn't fit one. Anyway, or if you hired an amp from a backline hire company and it had a Bulgin, they couldn't supply it. They had to bring it up to code. Is it illegal to have one on your amplifier as a private owner? No, absolutely not. If you want to use it in your own home, that's at your risk, that's fine. Do I legally have to change one if an amp comes in? Well, the argument here is twofold. First of all, they are deemed unsafe enough that the device won't pass a PAT test, portable appliance test, here in the UK, if it's fitted with a Bulgin socket. So the powers that be have said they are unsafe and you shouldn't use them. We also know they're unsafe. I mean, in fact, you could not design the worst power connector. I would have thought. I mean, it's so terribly bad. You shouldn't want to use it anyway. They are so bad. But the other issue is that as a repair tech, or when I'm offering repair services, any amplifier that I touch and then I send back out the door, I am making a legal declaration that amplifier is safe for you to use. And so if that amp develops a fault down the road and you get injured from it, I am liable, not you, it's me. If I say that amplifier is good to go, that's a legal declaration. Now, I can't say that amplifier is good to go if it's got a Bulgin fitted. Or if I do say it's good to go, I then... on one hand, I can't put a PAT test on it because they're unsafe, but also here it is back, it's absolutely fine to use. They contradict each other. So from a professional perspective, no, I'm not insured and I'm not covered, and I am legally responsible for that amplifier for a period of 12 months once it leaves my shop. So there is that responsibility for it. But as I said, those things are so unsafe, you shouldn't want to use one anyway. You are exposing yourself to all the risks, all the faults with them. To use your car analogy, you said that cars are not required to meet all the latest safety standards. No, they're not. So vintage cars can still be built and maintained to the regulations of when they were manufactured. However, you can't use them on the road if they're not roadworthy. So they still have to be maintained to a roadworthy state. So you can't run around on old cracked tyres, for example. Just because some of these old cars don't require an MOT doesn't mean they can be unroadworthy. So you still have to do that as well. So yeah, it's one of those things. They're just so bad. I can't stress to you enough how bad Bulgin sockets are. They're an accident waiting to happen. Get them swapped out. You can keep the original with the amp. The IEC socket replacements that I fit, these ones, got one here, require no drilling or filing or anything to get them in. They're a straight drop in. They bolt into place, so you can easily reverse it if you need to in the future, but you're protecting yourself, you're not putting yourself at risk, and you're making the amplifier, I don't know, 1 billion times safer. Mr. Grew says, "Hi Chris, been loving the videos." Well, thank you. Inspired to ask this by a recent one where you discussed the power transformer. I have a question that's been nagging away at me for years, and you might be the man to answer. Well, I will try. I run a few vintage Fender amps with their original US power transformers and use them through an auto transformer here in the UK in order to not modify the amps. Completely valid. I use a Tassima 240 to 120 volt step-down transformer, 500 volt amps. Good, that's the minimum rating you need. Model SC5476-2. Okay, I will look that up. This was the best quality voltage converter that I could see at the time. It says the output is 110 to 120 volts. Does this mean the amps are running at their design 50s, 70s, 110 volts? Well, measure it. Measure the output of your unit, see what it actually steps it down to. I would assume, based on what I know, that it's if you put 230 volts in one end, you'll get 110 out the other. If you put 240 volts in at one end, you'll get higher out. It depends what your mains wall voltage is as well. It won't. I'm not sure if that's a regulated supply or not. If not, then how do I simultaneously convert to UK voltage while still running the amps at the desired lower voltage they would have been designed for? Well, many ways to do it. Bucking transformer is one way. Variac is another. So, I mean, ultimately what you need to be able to do is to measure the way I would do it, in fact, on the bench at least, was I'd be measuring the heater voltage. And I would set using a variac, the input voltage to the amplifier sees, so 110, 112, 115, 117, 120, whatever it needs to be to get exactly my 6.3 volts on my heater supply. That will then tell you exactly what the amp needs to be, or close enough. But yeah, there's too many variables there to give you an exact answer, because we need to know exactly what that unit is delivering to your amp. It gives a range, which is a tolerance that they're allowed to use, but as to what it actually is, without getting actual readings, we don't know. But yeah, the easiest way to do it would be that in conjunction with a variac. Now you could get a UK mains variac to drop the supply voltage to your step-down transformer, or you could get a US variac that sits between your step-down transformer and the amp, and then adjust it that way. All seems a bit overly complicated, to be honest. Problem is, trying to set your amp to run at a certain mains voltage, I find can be somewhat of a fruitless endeavour, because the fluctuations in mains voltage anyway, you could easily get a 5, 6, 7, 10 volt swing throughout the day, and therefore that's going to be reflected to your amp. So, you might set it perfectly to 117 volts if that's where it wants to be. Later on in the day, it might be down at 114. Next day it could be up at 121. Who knows? So it's yeah. I wouldn't focus on it too much. It's still within the range that it wants to be. So yeah, that's the way I would do it. But I wouldn't. Low fidelity devices like this are a lot more tolerant of input voltage swings than other gear. So stop worrying about it. Just play the thing. Another Cornford on the bench. Seem to be getting a lot of them through the door lately, but I think that's because it's nice. The owners are realising there's a place they can bring them who'll actually look after them, rather than them being, somewhat unreliable. I think it's the opposite. I think people just want to keep on top of them, which is a good thing. So this one is quite an unusual Cornford. It's a Mark 52. But the story behind this one is that apparently this chassis was the reference chassis in the factory that they compared all other ones against. It was saved from the fire in 2008, and I'm not sure who by. There's a couple of people I'm going to email and ask to see if they might know. But the story is it was saved from the fire. Eventually it was put in a head shell. And has been in the hands of some owners over the couple of years. Unfortunately, it was then placed into storage. If I get my notes out, I'll be able to confirm exactly what's what, because I don't want to get this wrong. Sat in storage for 10 years. Doesn't say it was in a damp place or not. And it's come out of storage. It hasn't been turned on in a long time, so we're doing a nice little resurrection on it. So we'll get into it, maybe not in today's video, but we certainly will be looking around it at some point and checking it out. But this is the coolest thing, and this certainly adds credence to the story in that it is, I come over here, zoom you in, serial number 1. You see that? Serial number 1. MKGS. Don't know what that stands for. If anyone knows, please let me know in the comments. Just going to clean my lens, sorry. 0001. There it is. How cool is that? Number 1 on the bench that's been sat in storage for 10 years. So, customer wants me to do a resurrection on it, service it as required. It can run 2 different output valve types, EL34 and 6L6s, I believe. So he wants me to check the bias is appropriate for both output valve types. As I said, give it a service, make sure it's running fine, and go through it. But I'm sure, as we know, Cornfords are pretty bulletproof. Things rarely go wrong with them, and this one I think was actually stored in a flight case when it was in hibernation, which kind of adds up as to why it's in such good condition. We'll check the fuses. Mains fuse should be a 2 amp slow blow, which I can confirm it is. Oh, that doesn't feel happy. There you go. And the HT fuse should be a 500 milliamps low, which again it is. Good news. So having a quick look through the back, I can't see any discoloration on the output valves. The chassis looks very clean. Oh yes, there's the switch, EL346L6. There's a tiny bit of surface rust on the mains transformer, which I'm sure you'll see later on. But yeah, a really cool Cornford. I mean, the pots all feel good. Little bit of green corrosion on the shafts of those ones. But they all feel great. Yeah, so we're going to have to soft start this on the bench, but full visual inspection first. You know the drill by now. But yeah, look. Oh, interestingly, this is something we haven't really talked about on this channel. Maybe we'll get into it in more detail, but these amps have both a presence and a resonance control. Now, most of you will have heard of a presence control, which is part of the negative feedback loop in the amplifier. Certain frequencies are filtered out, and it just therefore adjusts the upper mids and the trebles in the amplifier as part of the negative feedback circuit. So it's in the output stage of the amplifier. The resonance control, which is quite rare to be fair, you don't really see them on a lot of amplifiers, but they do the same thing for the low end of the amplifier. And perhaps we'll do a demonstration of that in the future. But yeah, the rarely seen, rarely spotted resonance control alongside the presence, two masters, etc, etc, etc. There's something really satisfying when you're installing hardware into a chassis for the first time, especially an aluminium chassis, and you're using, you know, your tooth washers, because when you first tighten them down, you can feel them bite in. You get that really nice squish, and then it stiffens up as it bites into the metal. It's one of those really sad but really satisfying feelings. Absolutely love it. That's how I know you've got good metal to metal contact. Anyway, Mr. Green 888 says, or M Green, sorry, still looking for the repair on the Gibson 79 RVT. I have one with a dead channel that I'll be working on in the coming months. Curious to see how you proceed. That one is coming. It's the last of the 4 amps that came in that I need to get to. I've also got the Watkins effects unit as well that I need to look at. Sorry, I had a brain fart then. But yeah, I will get on to that. I need to do a full bench analysis of it, find out what's going on, play test, all that kind of stuff. But we'll get to it, and it will be a really cool video. I have had a very quick look inside, just took the back panel off to see what I was dealing with. Very cool, complex amplifier. But once you've studied the schematic, it's not too bad. So yeah, we will get on to that. Looking forward to it. Okay, Loxor, I assume that's what it is, says, "Hi Chris, I want to say thanks for all the great content. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Your discussion on why to not use the transformer screw as a ground point inspired me to revisit a 5v3 copy I built at a Mojo Tone workshop a few years ago. I'd never got on with it due to how noisy it was. I pulled it out of the closet and found that, sure enough, the filter caps were grounded to the same point as the ground from the main supply. Well, that's an absolute no-no. A washer on the leg of the power transformer. After splitting them up and grounding them to the chassis, as well as doing a better job dressing the wiring, the amp is much quieter and sounds better than I remember. Thanks for both the inspiration and instruction on how to give my amp a new life." Well, that's fantastic news. I really love it when people are actually getting something out of the advice that I give on this channel. As I always say, do the basics right, understand why things are done the way they are, and quite often you end up with a very noise-free, toneful amplifier. The problem with building vintage amp copies exactly the way they were built originally is that you are, unfortunately, often without knowing so, building in all of the issues that those amps have originally. Further to that, when you get, you know, these kit builds or these build classes that are done very quickly, following those original design layouts and things, it's a recipe for disaster sometimes, and you get amplifiers that people have paid good money for and just don't quite live up to the hype and stuff like that. So it's a shame, but yes, good for you. I'm glad you had the confidence to go in there, have a look, see what was going on, get it fixed. But, you know, I say it again, get the basics right. It's always good news. Rob Sell says, what are you using for a desoldering gun? Are you happy with it and no issues? We've actually talked about this before on a previous Q&A. God, that sun's bright again, isn't it? Hold on. Weather update. It's cold, but very, very sunny. Yeah, this is a cheapo. So I used to, long story cut short, I used to have a really expensive one, and for the price I paid for it, it was absolutely terrible. It was rubbish. I had all sorts of problems with it. It kept breaking, it kept clogging up. It never worked the way you wanted it to. And so I binned it off, and I ran a desoldering pen sucker thing for a long time. Eventually got bored with those, and I saw this unit for sale. It was less than 100 quid, so probably about $120. It's a cheapie, and because it's a cheapie, about a tenth of the price of the old one I had, you can forgive some of its shortcomings because it's so cheap. And you know what? It's been absolutely brilliant. It clogs up far less. I did change it is off, isn't it? I changed the tip on it. So I get a slightly wider opening for some of the thicker leads that I desolder. It's very consistent. It's a bit noisy in operation, but I don't really care. It's easy to clean. Parts are cheap for it. And it just seems to work. For the amount of desoldering that I do, and the abuse that I put it through, it's worth every single penny. I know they make them in all sorts of colours and stuff. It's just a cheapie one, probably made in the Far East, but it works. You know, it's clogged up once or twice, but that's only because I didn't clean it out at the end of the previous day. So yeah, apart from that, if you keep on top of it, it's absolutely fine. I don't trust the readout. I have it set the same temperature to exactly the same as my soldering iron, and it definitely takes longer to melt solders, but you learn that. That's fine. That's not maybe a temperature issue. That's a wattage issue. But yeah, it's really, really good for the money you pay anyway. Like I said, if this is I think I said it was an 8 out of 10 based on the price I paid. If it was twice the price, it wouldn't get that high of a score. But it's all in retrospect, not retrospect. It's all in balance, isn't it? So yeah, not bad. It works for me. And if it breaks, I'm going to just buy another one. It's fine. And finally, Russ Betts, regular commenter on the channel, nice to see you, Russ, says, I notice on the JMP1 that although there are vents above the valves, there's no vent above the mains transformer. This is a design fault by my standards, yeah, by mine too. I'm not surprised the transformers have a habit of overheating, as there is nowhere for the heat to escape. Yep, convection cooling is king. That may be something the owner could rectify, whether by his own efforts or getting a metal workshop to do the job for him. Great episode as ever. Thank you. Well, you're absolutely right. I mean, they did the right thing by adding cooling vents for the two ECC 83s, but the transformer as well. To be fair, when it's running normally, the transformer doesn't really get that hot. You know, it was 20 odd degrees Celsius, so not hot at all, probably fine. The argument, though, as you're probably right, is that once it's enclosed in the case, in a rack, on a hot stage at a summer festival somewhere, it's probably cooking, isn't it? And with no cooling fan or anything like that, it gets hot, doesn't it? So easiest way, I mean, you wouldn't need a metal shop. You could just drill some holes in a nice pattern. Be easy enough. Wouldn't take long. You could just, trace out the size of the transformer and then add, I don't know, 10-15% oversize and just drill loads of different cooling holes. That'd be an easy way to do it. It'd be interesting to stick a temperature probe on it and test it that way, but it's already gone back to the customer, so I won't be doing that. But yeah, you're absolutely right, Russ. I bet it saved them a few quid during manufacturing not to put those cooling holes in, and they probably figured, well, under warranty we'll only replace X amount of transformers, so that's the cheaper option. Okay, just a little bit of workshop admin for you before I forget. Today is Tuesday. You'll see this video on Wednesday, which is fine. I am closed this Thursday and Friday this week. The Mrs. Rift and I are off to Cornwall for a mini break to celebrate my birthday, which is on Friday. So if you want to wish me a happy birthday, please do. The best present you could give me is to join the channel for a small fee. That would really help. I've actually added some more membership levels, so with some extra perks, especially if you want more technical advice or some support designing stuff. So I've added 2 extra levels. No obligation, of course. You choose whichever level is right for you, but that would be a great birthday present to me if you wouldn't mind joining the channel and supporting me that way. But yeah, I'll be closed Thursday and Friday. There will be a video on Sunday, which if I get all of my work done today, I will film tomorrow on Wednesday. So you're not going to miss a video, which is important, but it might be a shorter video because obviously I'm not in on Thursday and Friday. So, but yeah, that's the admin done. Well, that's it then, guys. Thank you very much for watching once again. As always, please give this video a thumbs up or your comments and questions down below. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you know when new videos come out. If you're feeling really, really generous, why not join the channel like these guys have? And I will catch you all at the next one.